I know it's early, but so thankful to have all of you here. Hopefully you all skipped the decaf coffee and went straight for the caffeine. We've got a jam-packed agenda today, and I'm thrilled that you all made it at 8:30 this morning. That is a real feat. So I am also super excited to bring this event back to reInvent. This is the second time we've had this event. The first time we had it was last year. And the whole idea behind the event last year was, how do we bring a group of underrepresented folks and women together to really learn from each other? And I remember when we had this idea, I was sitting in New York next to a colleague of mine, and what I said was, hey, wouldn't it be great if at reInvent we had a forum where we could really share our stories, and we could start to highlight voices from our customers, from our partners, and from AWS. So we started to scratch it out on a napkin at a bar. And then it turned into this. So I really am grateful that you all showed up and thrilled that you're here. So couple housekeeping things. This is the first of 2 breakout sessions taking place here today. And then there's a networking lunch upstairs. So to kick off the day, I am thrilled to share the stage with my esteemed panelists. And I want to talk a little bit about these 3 amazing women. They're obsessed with what they do. They're outliers. They're trailblazers. They think differently, and they're not fond of the norm. We can follow them. You could idolize them. You can talk about them, but the only thing that you can't do is stop them. These are the types of leaders that are out there to change the world, whether it is with AI, it's with software, or it's with platform engineering. These are the women that change the world, and their voices and their stories are the things that legends are made of. So with that, I'll just walk through the panel and they can each introduce themselves. Dia Wen, who leads Responsible AI for AWS. Shweta Sheriff, the Director of Platform Networking at Netflix. And Mai Lee, the Vice President of Kumo Software for AWS. So thank you for joining me.
Thank you.
Okay, to get us started, I'm going to start with you. Why don't you introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about the technical work that you lead, and then we'll just see where it takes us from there.
Sure, thank you so much, Rachel. I am excited to be here. I'm glad that you all are here as well this morning. These are the kinds of conversations that are necessary and actually fuel me. So I appreciate that you all are here, as well as the opportunity to share with you. I'm Dia Wen. As mentioned, I've been with AWS for over 6.5 years. And I've been leading our customer-facing work on responsible AI globally. And you mentioned something in your introduction, and you mentioned not being stopped. And I want to connect that to the technical work that I have an opportunity to do and had been leading at AWS. So probably about 5 years ago was when I was looking to actually make this career transition or pivot, if you will. My background is in computer science and other areas of technology. I was working on operating model transformation for customers, enterprise customers in the cloud, and saw what I believe to be a need as far as leaning into responsible AI. And I thought that we as a company should be doing more to be able to help our customers that we're building on top of our services. So think of hundreds of thousands of customers using our AI ML services to build products to reach hundreds and thousands or millions of people and other customers. And I thought, shouldn't we do something like what we do with well-architected and giving them a structure, a framework, an approach to understand and build the right foundation for AI. And initially, people said to me, that's not gonna happen here. Like, you're not gonna do that work here. That it was almost as if there was, this belief that there was less of an interest. We were focused on other things. And it took me about 1.5 years before I was able to get support for the new practice, the new area of business that we started in professional services. But it really was, pushing beyond the limits and not accepting no from others that allowed us to get to the space where we are with the work that we do from a customer perspective. But as you say, having a broader impact on the way in which people consume and interact with AI and the way in which that affects our lives.
Excellent. All right, Shweta, why don't you share?
Hi everyone, I'm Shweta Saraf. I lead the platform networking team at Netflix. So what that means is every time you open up your Netflix app and click on your favorite title, all the packets that traverse the internet and seamlessly get delivered without you having to miss a single show or a single scene, that's what my team is responsible for. So it is a lot of responsibility, and with that, it's also a lot of work that goes underneath it. But my story is one of courage and creativity. I came to this country many years back to pursue my master's. And since then, it has always been, I identify myself as a pioneer, whether it's breaking new grounds or showing up with courage and going where nobody else has gone. And especially, I've been told you can't do this. And to me, that's like the thing which allows me to go even further. I'm like, yes, let me show you how, Obviously, I won't say it to them, but that's what is my mantra. But essentially, for me, I have been building networks for a very long time, whether it is hyperscalers and data center level of networking, right down to the hardware and the software that runs on it, or to the application level networking, which powers the Netflixes of the world and the largest streaming network. So that's a little bit about me.
Excellent. Well, we certainly put Netflix to the test this morning in the back of the room, just flowing through all of the things that should be on my list that aren't.
Yes.
So, bye.
Yes, hi. Thank you for coming so early in the morning. So I'm a builder. I build things. People hire me to build things, product, technology, organizations around the world for over 30 years, and I love it. I joined Amazon, leading Kumo means cloud in Japanese. I've been an Amazon customer for over 25 years, and now I'm able to help customers to be able to have the experience to grow. Inventions, innovation, that's what I came for Amazon to get that chance. And now in AWS, I build the experiences for product throughout their cloud, the customer's cloud journey. Things you hear from planning to assessment of your cloud, your environment, as your trusted advisor, well-architected reviews, AWS Health, incidents, as well as AMS managed services.
Excellent. So we're going to switch topics really quick, and I'm going to ask each of you to share what is it that you're most proud of related to the work that you lead. I mean, for me, the culmination of this room, starting from a napkin where we wrote in a bar to a paper to this tops the list for me. What about for you, Diwa?
Oh, you're starting with me, sorry. So what am I most proud of? I think for me, it is knowing that I'm an example to others. And not because I am so great, because I don't think of that, but just because of the perseverance and the focus and the tenacity that I have. And I know how valuable and important it is for others to see someone in a place or position in order to feel like that's possible for them. When I was in school, and even with my interest in going into computers and technology, it was foreign and not necessarily common for women to say they wanted to be a computer engineer. And I came from a family of teachers, so no one in my family knew what in the world I was talking about, right, when I said I wanted to be a computer engineer. And I said that in the 3rd grade, but I didn't have people that looked like me, wasn't aware of those that were coming from areas that I came from to even look up to aspire, and point to that and say I wanted to be that. And so for me it is, over the years now, having an opportunity to be that someone for someone else. And that's not just in the work that I get to do from a responsible AI perspective or influencing AI, but just in standing up as a woman and a woman of African descent who's a technologist.
Excellent. Either of you want to share what you're most proud of?
Yeah, for me, it's the idea of taking something from idea to production and doing it over and over again. I've done it in big companies, in small startups, in hyperscalers, now at Netflix. And most importantly, it's also about the culture that you create when you do that, right? Because as a leader, you need to think about technology, you need to think about innovation, you need to assemble the best team and then unleash them. And I feel like I find great joy in doing that over and over again throughout my career and create a culture where people can truly do the best work of their lives. That's something I'm really proud of, and probably my team can attest to that.
Yeah, and for me, I find the joy when my customers are successful. I built data centers from the ground up, rack and stack, one server at a time, and I've worked all the way up down the entire tech stack through different industries. So when I talk to customers, I understand their struggles and their challenges. I understand how and where AWS can help them, and exactly the tool, the service, or the approach to help them. And when they come back to stories to tell me like, hey, I was able to do this in my workload in the cloud. I was able to find the security gap. I find so much joy and energy when my customers tell me these stories, and it's something that just kind of keeps me going all the time.
That's a great one. So, switching topics a bit, Mai, can you share with the audience how the work that you're doing today is making space for women coming up through the ranks and helping them feel empowered to lead teams and raise their hand when they're unsure of their next step?
Yes, my number one objective in every organization that I go in to lead is making sure that people can raise their voice. I provide psychological safety, because many times when you're having a conversation and you come from different languages, different culture, my team is in, more than 15 countries around the world where English is not the first language. So making space for them to feel comfortable to speak and to share their experiences, or to actually say, there's a better approach of doing this, or I have a concern of this approach, I don't think it's going to scale. And then how do they describe that to you when one is they don't know you, two is they're in a totally different country and a totally different language. So I provide a lot of forums where there's all hands, offsites that I have 4 times a year, and roundtables I host in every hubs that I visit, is so that people can see the way I lead, the way I make space for people to speak. I don't expect people to disagree with me, and I actually don't want them to agree with me. I want them to be able to tell me what they want, what they believe in, and where they think that something is off. Because as a leader, I fly 50,000 feet and extraordinarily fast, and I rely upon my people who are on the ground in front of customers, who know day in and day out and make so many decisions every day for me, for the organization, on behalf of customers. And so if I don't create a culture where they feel comfortable, that they speak up, we're going to build the wrong things. And then some things me often I will not know. So I always host a lot of these roundtables, and so people know they have access to me. Feel free to Slack me anytime. I'm available, I'm here to listen, and just make sure that they're comfortable.
Would you like to add anything?
Yeah, like speaking of making room for all the voices, right? I think it's really, really important. I'm going to give you guys an example of something that happened recently. So my team is extremely smart and we work on very hard problems, and sometimes it means we have to find creative names for new projects that we are spinning up. And there were a bunch of guys who were leading this project, and they came up with this name, Clutch, which was a acronym for something that stood for cloud related project. And they were thinking about clutch as in sports, they were thinking about clutch as in cars, and I was like, clutch? Why would you name something clutch? You know, so something as simple as that. Like, I feel like we have such kind of conversations, and as a leader, making room for all voices to be heard is equally important, because some voices are loud, some voices are not, and it takes a lot for you as a leader to draw those voices and represent them and make space for them. And one way I do that is I also pay attention to how do we hire, how do we performance manage, how do we create incentives, and keep that very consistent in the sense that we want to widen the pipeline. We want to make sure all kinds of backgrounds, as much as we can support in terms of who we interview, because like we get hundreds and hundreds of resumes, right? So it's really difficult for us to sort of make sure that the pipeline is widened enough, and then we still hold the high bar for who gets in and who's part of the team. But I'm proud to say that when I look around, we have about 25% women, which is, yes, there's still room to go, but our CPO and our CTO is a woman too. So when I look around, I don't feel like, I mean, I feel like I belong here. I don't find for people who are like me anymore. So that really makes a difference in terms of how you show up and how you pave the path for those who are looking up to you and wanting to be where you are.
Great.
So I want to sort of take a slightly different approach in terms of answering that question. And I love what both of you said about, the culture and the belonging, or, the work that I get to do from a responsible AI. So just for a moment, if we talk about responsible AI, it is about like creating a culture of responsibility, in addition to putting in place people, process, and technology to minimize the risks and unintended impact of AI and maximize its benefit, hopefully not just to the company, but to society as a whole. And so one of the things that the work that we do with our customers and others is actually about making sure that we are including and thinking about the voice and perspective of all the customers and the stakeholders that would be served. But that requires culture, right? And so what you were talking about, the culture that we create, it's working with our customers to actually think about the culture that we're creating and the level of responsibility that we are going to take as individuals and in the organization to ensure that our technology is being created, designed, implemented, used in ways that isn't going to affect or have some negative impact on others. And then we have these conversations and work through approaches for them to think about how are we actually ensuring that we're not affecting any one population adversely, right? And I think that kind of work is at the core of how do we make sure that we're providing access and creating space for others. So some of those conversations means that organizations have to actually do the work in order to make sure that we're bringing in the diverse perspectives and voices that are missing. And some of that will be done in hiring, but others is using resources that we have in an organization already, like our affinity groups or our resource groups or our IDE leaders, right, to actually have an impact on the product, and talking and working with them in ways to see how they can put that into practice, or being very strategic about process and checklists and other things that can be instituted in an organization to ensure that we're thinking about the voice and perspective of those that are underserved or not necessarily at the table, but who are stakeholders who are going to be impacted by the technology. And so while, yes, there are things that I do individually to help build my team or to help engage folks at Amazon, and AWS has tons of ways that we do that, but I think even greater is the work that we get to do with customers that lead us into this greater conversation around how do we make sure, because there are, the example that I use often when I talk about this is with seatbelts, right? And when seatbelts were created in the 1950s, they didn't have a majority of women drivers. 80% of them were men. And so they designed seatbelts and created those with male specifications specifically and tested them for men. And there are tons of studies that talk about the increased harm in certain cases for women and even children, because we didn't think about the 20% that were children. That were women drivers. We didn't think about the other stakeholders in the car that were children. So now something as meaningful with intended good use, seatbelts, had this unintended consequence, right? That we've been working through. And these are the kinds of, that's at the core of the work. It's like, how do we make sure that we're bringing in that voice? Even if we don't see it now, that they're a stakeholder that we have to pay attention to, that those are individuals that have to have access to the technology and can't be impacted by that. And that's at the core of the work that we get to do, and at the core of responsible AI.
Great. So I'm gonna engage the audience a bit here. How many of you have your boss in the room? Raise your hands. This is the interactive part, by the way. Okay, I can't see, so I'm hoping. So next question. How many of you love the boss that you work for?
Oh, wow.
Love the boss that you work for. How many of you would follow that boss to a new company? Okay, put your hands down. How many people didn't raise their hand in the last question? Please stand up if you're willing to. Or raise your hand, one of the two.
You want me to stand up too?
Yes. So if you didn't want to stand up, no problem, but recognize that you can sit down now. Thank you. You have to not just love what you get to do every day, you have to love the organization that you work for, and you have to love who you work for. So when you hear the stories of these women and how they're crafting organizations and how they're building a culture and how important belonging is, that's up to all of us in this room to make sure that we're helping each other. So for the people that had your hands raised, please find somebody in the room who didn't have their hand raised. Introduce yourself to them. That's the purpose of these events. It's not just to sit here at 8:30 in the morning and listen to stories. It's to actually learn from each other and connect with each other. So next question before we go. Okay, how many of you are sitting next to somebody you know? Okay, if you're sitting next to somebody you know, please get up, take your stuff, and move to somebody you don't know and introduce yourself really quickly. Again, this is the interactive part. This is the whole point of these events, is that you start to talk to each other. And I know how uncomfortable it is for women because none of you are moving.
Oh, yes.
Come on.
Let's do
Introduce yourselves.
Well.
Get up, move.
You all have to get
You're
up.
not trees.
Yeah.
This is an opportunity. This is fantastic.
I still don't see movement.
Be bold. It's okay. Yes, meet someone new.
I see them turning around.
Yes.
All right, now I want to pause for a moment. That's the hard part. This is always the hard part. All right, ladies, gentlemen.
Look at what you started.
Okay, we are returning to our regularly scheduled programming. Can the folks in the back flash the lights a couple times? Okay,
Thank you.
thank you. So I want you all to pause for 1 second. And I want you to think about the energy you just created in this room versus the energy when you came in to listen to 4 women talk about their experiences. Did you notice a difference? Again, this is the interactive part. Thank you. That's what we're asking all of you to get out of these next several hours, is not just listen to these amazing stories, but you each need to get out of your comfort zone and think about, how do I go meet some new people? You never know if the person sitting next to you is going to be your boss in the future, or they're going to be able to teach you something about rack and stack and why it takes so long, or used to take so long, to rack and stack in data centers, or what the latest Netflix show is. Please do not leave today without introducing yourself to at least 3 other people, and remember that energy that you just created on your own. So we're going to follow that same energy path in our next set of questions.
There's one thing I wanted to add.
Yes, please.
So when Dia talked about access, right, it reminded me of another quality that as leaders we need to exhibit front and center, which is empathy. You don't normally know what other person's experience is. You can't pretend that you know it. You need to learn and be curious and ask questions. And one way this came across to me recently was, how many of you have seen One Piece on Netflix or have heard of it? Okay.
Heard of it?
Some folks, right? It's based off a famous anime series, and it was converted into a show. So when we first decided to launch this, the numbers were not what we were expecting, and everybody was like, this was supposed to be our big one. So then people realized, hey, we have this whole team in Japan. We have never asked them what works, what will resonate with people.
Right.
And the moment people started connecting the dots and involving that team, the numbers just shot up. Because the approach you take for a US-based show and the one that comes out of Asia is not the same. And you need to be cognizant enough to bring people in and connect those dots and have that empathy. So thank you for sharing your story. That's what I got reminded of.
Okay, so the last question that I have, we've talked about our careers. You've all talked about the things that you're most proud of and the technical teams that you lead. But based on the energy from the room, I'm going to switch it up a little bit. And I'm going to ask you to talk about the sacrifices that you've made and the challenges that you've had to face on a day-to-day basis. What are the things that we don't talk about? And I'll start. So I was very similar to you. I built data centers around the world for some of the largest companies on the planet, American Express, DHL, and I planned every single one of my pregnancies around data center build out. This is back when they actually took a really long time, before the cloud, by the way. WAN, LAN conversions, all of those types of things. And I just worked right through it. Until I hit 40. And I went in and I found out that I had breast cancer. And I went home, shocked. I didn't tell anybody at work. It took me 3 days to tell my husband at the time. Once he found out about it, his response was, okay, we'll just go get that taken care of. I still didn't share it with anybody at work. I Ubered myself to Mayo Clinic just to do it all on my own, only to find out that the doctors wouldn't actually let you in for surgery unless you had somebody there for you. So it was a real eye-opener for me of, hey, we're on this planet for several turns around the sun. If you don't share your experiences, by the way, I'm not married to that. Insert. Anyway, but if we don't start to share some of those experiences with other women that we might know, or with women we don't know, or with people that we're working with, how in the world are they going to know what's going on in our lives? And you never know when that story is actually going to be the inspiration for somebody else. Yeah. So with that, I'd love for each of you to share, what are some of the sacrifices or personal ahas that you've had along the way that this room could benefit from? Who would like to start?
So let me first say to you, thank you so much for sharing that story. And you actually just brought a tear to my eye. So I just had a friend who I buried earlier this year to cancer. And I don't know why, what you just said just really touched me. Because it matters so much to be able to have, what you were just saying, that we're created for, we weren't designed to do things alone. I mean, we actually are created for human interaction and engagement, and to be able to have someone to support you through that process. I was that for my friend, and walked with her for the last 4 months of her life before I had to bury her. So that, I mean, and
it mattered.
And it mattered, right, to be there when family wasn't close and all that other kind of stuff. So I just thank you for being a survivor, but sharing your story as well, because that really touched me. So sorry about that.
No, it mattered. Those moments matter. That's what matters.
So you mentioned something, and I do this, and people have often said, like, why do you share some of the information you share? So when I go out of office, and even if it's a day or it might be a couple of days, my out of office message is usually something very personal, right? Like I will say, it's spring break, and I'm taking the week off to spend with my sons. I will not respond to emails. I'll return back on a certain day. And that used to be scrutinized because, to take time off for your family, especially as women, to take time off to care for a sick loved one could impact your career. And one of the things that I've done, and I've shared this very, very openly, in my out of office messages, so that when people see them, one, they recognize I'm human and life happens and things, we have to tend to things, and that's okay. But it also, for me, creates an opportunity that I've had so many people say, like, I didn't think about that, or thank you for sharing that because I need to take time off too. And I've had people, countless individuals, share and tell me how much that meant, because it matters that we're able to have a space, right. And they see people that, yes, I'm going to take time off for my kids, and when it's this recital and other things, and I've had to work, as you said, my life around that, in ways sometimes that I never desired, because I wanted to have a family and to have a career as well, and that often is challenging. But I've become much more comfortable with being real about the stuff that happens and the time that I need to take to be able to address life, right, and all that comes with it. And I try to create that same opportunity or space for my team. But I recognize that that's not always acceptable every place. And I certainly have come to this later in my career, so I've been in technology for 28 years. And so now at this stage I go, if a company is going to penalize me for handling life and doing life and making sure that I can come back to my work full, present, and giving my best, then that's not a place I want to be.
That's right.
Right?
It goes back to, do you love the organization and do you love your leader?
But it's taken a while, because I would have hidden the fact that I had to care for my friend, or I would have hidden the fact that I wanted to take time off for my kids. I wouldn't have told folks that I have a disability and there are times where I'm not able to function 100%. Like, I would have never shared those things, but it's created in me earlier in my career, and I hope and pray that people can get that sooner, right?
Yeah.
Because we put up so much trying to be perfect for the work environment or not be real, that human. And it has a devastating impact. And if we can just be, human and realize that stuff happens and be able to work around that, that creates so much more of a better space for us to be able to operate and function in, and actually give our best to our customers and to others.
My 16-year-old regularly says there is no Instagram filter for real life. So
Very nice.
That's a good one.
With that, Mai, would you like to add anything about sacrifices and things that have just been mind-boggling?
Yes, absolutely. I can tell you, I used to work 24/7, 7 days a week, and I loved it. I loved building things, fixing things, solving problems. And then I became a mom of twins, and I was thinking I was going to run the same rate. I don't know what I was thinking. Until I got sick, and my doctor's like, "Are you not eating well, sleeping well? You're not exercising?" I'm like, "None of the above." And she said, "Your blood work." She's like, "If I put on your medications, you're going to be on it for life, and that's horrible for your health. I need to check you in the hospital, or you're going to tell me you're going to be doing something different." My career was flying really high. I was on my way up to vice president at the time, and this was 20-something years ago. And I decided I'm going to quit my job and take the summer off because I'm going to focus on my own health. Because what's the point of being alive, being a mom, if you are not around? I took the summer off, spent time with my kids, took care of my health. And then when it was time in the fall to look for a job, I actually downgraded my job. I said, I'm going to go down, and this is where I'm going to be. And within months of getting to a new job, my manager's like, "Oh, Ma, you need to be promoted." I'm like, no. I said, I need to tell you, I took this job for a reason. My kids at the time, by that time, they were in the kindergarten and first, second grade. I drove on every field trip. I volunteered in every classroom things, and I said, this is going to be my life. And then when the job became a lot of traveling, because I eventually became the EMEA lead, where I have to travel to EMEA, I said, okay, I'm going to need a different job. And I downgraded again. Because I said that now that the kids are starting to grow, I actually need more time to be around for all the sports activity and the dance classes and stuff and the swimming lessons. And so for the next few years, I downgraded again. But I always knew of my capability. I knew who I was, and I knew what I eventually wanted in my career. But it's just not right now. And I'm okay with that. And then even that other job I downgraded, eventually they're like, I think you need a promotion, Ma. You need to be doing this. And I said, well, I think I am ready. And so then my career took off again. And so, the careers go up and down. It has a trajectory. You have to know what's important to you.
That's right.
And that's what you have to go for, to like what these other ladies said.
I think these are the conversations that people show up for and people take more away from than any of the other panels that I've ever had the pleasure of moderating or listening to. So, last question to you.
Can I answer that?
Yes, please do.
Yeah, so I resonate with what both of you are saying. To me, it was the early realization that it's your own mindset. It's the story that you feed yourself. Like, women can have it all. They can have it all, just not at the same time.
Yes.
So I learned how to compartmentalize in my life early. I learned how to do seasons. I married a very good man, and kudos to all the men in our life who support us.
Yes.
But
Yes.
So it was a combination of that allowed me to fly high in my career, take care of my son, take care of my family, and do all that, right? But earlier this year, when you shared your story, I've not shared this with anyone, so I'm going to be vulnerable. Like, I had a scare where they detected something, and we didn't know what it was. So I moved on for 2 months of this ups and downs of not knowing what it is, not knowing how to plan my life. I'm a very much type A planner kind of person, and just not knowing how to pause and take it all in, and whether my life is going to change drastically, because what if it is cancer, right? So thank God it wasn't malignant. It was something, but it wasn't malignant. And I feel like what I've learned from that episode is it's important to take a pause, think what's important for you. You're not going to remember your projects or your job roles or your titles. You want to remember the memories you create with the people that you love. So really do that and choose the path of least regret, not the path that's easiest.
Path of least regret. I love that.
Yeah.
So, I took a couple notes while you all were chatting, and What I heard from all three of you was intention separates people, whether it's the intention to set up a responsible AI practice. It's the intention of recognizing when it's time to focus on your family, or it's the intention of figuring out what won't you regret. It's all of those small effort and those small choices that have led to huge results for all of you. I think the difference between good and great are really those moments that matter. It's creating those moments, whether it's with your friends, it's with your job, it's with the people that you've just met. It's that one moment where you meet somebody who cares.
Yeah, and it's also, Rachel, about that you role modeled. So when I quit my job, like everybody was just shocked. Not just my colleagues, my customers, the partners, my neighbors who know me so well, they were just shocked. And I told them, I said, this is my priority. Mm-hmm. You know, I didn't tell not everyone the depth of my health situation, but I said, this is my priority, this is what I want. I've done all these things. Now it's time for me to focus myself and my family, and it's okay to take a break.
Yes.
And it drove a conversation in the company that had been talked about, because I was the most senior woman at that time in tech. So they were shocked I was willing to walk away from it. I said, no, I'm not walking away from anything. I'll be back. But right now, this is important.
You need challenges to find your limits, and you need limits to find yourself. And I think that's what all three of you have shared today. So thank you all so much for joining us this early morning. I hope you'll stick around for our second breakout session. It starts at 10 a.m. The networking lunch starts at 11:30 in Bayside A. Obviously, we will have refreshments outside, but before you all go outside and have your break, do you remember what we started this session with? You all came here to learn. You came here to meet other people. You came here to share stories. It's up to each of you on these breaks to go do that. So I would encourage all of you, while you're out there, walk up to a stranger, introduce yourself to them, tell them about the boss that you did love. Because all of us have had them, right? Everybody's had a boss that they've loved. And flip that with, hey, here's the boss I didn't love. And just notice how the conversation changes. And it's an easy icebreaker. You don't have to share any kind of stories that you don't want, but you've got to make it a priority to invest in yourselves and invest in meeting new people. Look at all of the people in this room. There's supposed to be 800 people here today. I can promise you that somebody in this room has got a job opening. I can promise you that somebody in this room could help you through a personal challenge. I promise you that somebody in this room could network you with somebody that you might not know. But if you don't ask and you don't put yourself out there, you're going to be the exact same person you walked in this morning at 8:30 as you are when you walk out at 12:30. And that, in fact, is the worst thing that could happen to you. So make sure that over the next several hours, you become better, you do better, and you create better. With that, thank you all so much. Enjoy your day.